Today we explore Norman, Oklahoma, a town known for its calm and conservative atmosphere. However, beneath the surface, a woman's hidden life unraveled into a shocking murder that shook the entire community. This is the story of a devoted housewife whose hidden affair with a neighbor's teenage daughter ended in a tragic and violent death. Helen Marquardt was 42 years old and the picture of a perfect Southern homemaker. She lived in Norman, Oklahoma, a quiet suburb known for its conservative values and close-knit community. Her life appeared straight out of a family sitcom. She had a beautiful home, a devoted husband, and 3 energetic triplets, Ryder, Rifle, and Ryan. Helen was deeply engaged in the community, particularly at her children's school. Helen's kindness and warm demeanor made her a cherished figure in the neighborhood. To those around her, it seemed like she had it all. Her husband, Robert Markwart, was a successful corporate lawyer, recognized for his expertise in helping major oil companies navigate legal loopholes to drill for oil in developing countries. The family regularly attended First Baptist of Norman, where Helen led a women's Bible study group. They were the type of family you'd find on a Christmas card, smiling and picture perfect. However, beneath the surface, Helen was struggling. Helen's marriage to Robert had become cold and distant over the years. Robert's demanding job often kept him away for weeks, and even when he was home, he was usually absorbed in work. The strong connection they once shared had faded, leaving Helen feeling lonely and sexually unfulfilled. She began to crave excitement, something to break the monotony of her everyday life. In early 2022, Helen found that excitement in a most unexpected place: her 17-year-old neighbor, Taylor Ronley. What started as a friendly mentorship, with Helen teaching Taylor how to, quote, act like a good Christian lady, soon turned into something much darker. Their relationship rapidly turned into a secret sexual affair, with Helen becoming increasingly obsessed with the young woman. She was drawn to Taylor's youth and vitality, qualities Helen felt she had lost over the years. The affair became Helen's escape, a way to fill the emptiness left by her failing marriage. In the days before her death, Helen's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She pulled away from her usual activities and became more possessive of Taylor. Those close to her noticed that something was seriously wrong, but no one could have foreseen the tragic outcome that was about to happen. On the morning of June 5, 2022, Robert Markwart returned home to his Norman, Oklahoma house after a long night at the office. It was just after 7 a.m., and the sun was shining brightly through the windows. The house was unnervingly quiet, which was unusual since his 3 children, Ryder, Rifle, and Ryan, were usually up and preparing for school. Robert expected to find Helen bustling in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, but instead, the kitchen was empty. He called out for her, but there was no response. As he climbed the stairs to their bedroom, a growing sense of unease began to settle in. When he reached the bedroom door, he noticed it was slightly ajar. Pushing it open, Robert was confronted with a scene that would haunt him forever. Helen was lying naked on the floor beside their bed, surrounded by a pool of blood. Helen had been shot to death. The room was in disarray. The bed was unmade, furniture was overturned, and shards of broken glass were scattered across the floor. It was clear that a violent struggle had occurred. Robert stood frozen, trying to process the scene before him, before panic took over. He rushed to Helen's side, desperately trying to wake her, but it was too late. Realizing she was gone, Robert grabbed his phone and dialed 911, his hands shaking as he struggled to explain the situation to the operator. His 911 call was frantic. Robert's voice was barely steady as he told the operator that his wife had been shot and wasn't breathing. The operator tried to calm him, but Robert was clearly in shock. When the police arrived a few minutes later, they found Robert sitting on the floor next to Helen's body, his face pale and his eyes wide with disbelief. He was taken outside and placed in a police car while officers secured the scene. News of Helen's death quickly spread through the neighborhood. Neighbors who had witnessed the commotion began to gather outside the Markwart home, whispering among themselves as they tried to understand what had happened. Local news stations, including KFOR-TV, quickly arrived, cameras rolling as they reported live from the quiet suburban street now at the center of a grisly murder investigation. The Norman Police Department responded within minutes of Robert's 911 call on June 5, 2022. Officer David Collins, a 12-year veteran known for his calm demeanor, was the first to arrive on the scene. Officer Collins quickly assessed the situation and called for backup. The once quiet suburban street was soon filled with police cars, their red and blue lights slicing through the early morning calm. Detective Dwayne Yokum, known for his meticulous nature and track record in solving complex cases, was assigned to lead the investigation. As the officers entered the home, they were confronted with a chaotic crime scene. The bedroom was in complete disarray. The bed was unmade, the mattress was askew, and several pieces of furniture were overturned. The broken glass on the floor indicated that a struggle had occurred. Helen Marquardt's lifeless body lay on the floor next to the bed, a gunshot wound to her head clearly the cause of death. Blood had pooled around her, staining the beige carpet a deep red. Detective Yokum surveyed the scene with a practiced eye. She took note of Helen's body position and the surrounding objects, mentally recording every detail. The scene revealed a narrative of desperation and violence. Helen's face showed signs of a struggle, with bruises evident on her arms and legs. The disarray in the room suggested she had fought fiercely against her attacker. A small handgun was found on the floor near her body, presumed to be the murder weapon. The handgun, along with the shards of glass and other items from the room, was quickly bagged as evidence. Forensic specialists, clad in white coveralls, carefully combed through the bedroom, dusting for fingerprints and collecting blood-stain samples. They photographed the entire scene, documenting every detail for the investigation. Outside, Officer Collins interviewed Robert Markwart, who remained in a state of shock. Robert explained that he had discovered Helen's body upon returning home from work early that morning. He insisted he had no idea who could have been responsible for the crime. As the questioning went on, Robert's responses were slow and disjointed, revealing his shock and grief. Detective Yokum, while empathetic to his emotional state, understood the urgency of the situation. The first 48 hours after a murder are crucial, and she was determined to collect as much evidence as possible before any leads went cold. The investigation was just starting, but the scene at the Markwart home had already offered several clues to guide the detectives in their search for Helen's killer. Taylor Ronley, the 17-year-old neighbor and the primary suspect, was a well-known figure in Norman, Oklahoma. A bright and independent young woman, she was set to graduate from Norman High School that month. Taylor was popular among her peers and known for her rebellious streak in a town where conservative values often dictated behavior. Despite her vibrant exterior, her sexual relationship with Helen Marquardt had taken a troubling turn. What started as a mentorship quickly turned into a secret, passionate affair, leaving Taylor feeling increasingly trapped. Helen, who had initially guided Taylor through the community's expectations, soon became a possessive and controlling partner, pushing Taylor to experiment beyond her comfort zone. Taylor's friends began to notice a change in her behavior. Taylor had become more withdrawn, avoiding social gatherings and skipping her usual hangouts, like the local Starbucks where she and her friends often met. When Detective Dwayne Yokum and her team brought Taylor in for questioning, they focused on her sexual relationship with Helen. The detectives considered Helen's possessiveness as a potential motive for the murder. Taylor's reaction during the interrogation was revealing. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her hands and avoiding eye contact. Detective Yokum questioned her about the nature of her relationship with Helen. At first, Taylor was reluctant to provide details. However, as the questioning continued, she admitted to a romantic relationship with Helen that had recently soured. Taylor explained that Helen had become increasingly erratic in the weeks before her death. Taylor mentioned that Helen would frequently call her at all hours, demanding she drop everything to have sex. She also revealed that Helen had threatened to expose their relationship if Taylor attempted to end it. These threats had caused Taylor significant stress, making her feel increasingly suffocated by Helen's constant need for control. When asked about her whereabouts the night of the murder, Taylor claimed she was at a friend's house, studying for final exams. The detectives noted her alibi but remained skeptical due to the tension in her relationship with Helen. Taylor's nervous demeanor during the interrogation further heightened their suspicions. Detective Yokum pressed Taylor for more details, but she continued to assert her innocence, insisting she had no involvement in Helen's death. Despite her denials, Taylor's connection to Helen and the strained nature of their relationship made her a key suspect. The detectives knew they needed to delve deeper into Taylor's story to confirm or rule out her involvement in the crime. The next person under scrutiny was Robert Markwart, Helen's 46-year-old husband. As a corporate lawyer specializing in helping oil companies exploit legal loopholes for drilling in developing countries, Robert had a demanding career that often kept him away from home. He worked long hours and frequently traveled for business meetings and court appearances. In the close-knit community of Norman, Robert was recognized for his professional success, but also for his distant, somewhat aloof demeanor. Unlike Helen, who was actively involved in the community, Robert kept mostly to himself, concentrating on his career while leaving Helen to manage their home and raise their 3 children, Ryder, Rifle, and Ryan. His relationship with Helen had been strained for some time. The couple, once viewed as the perfect pair, had grown apart over the years. Friends and neighbors observed the change. They no longer attended events together, and when they did, there was a noticeable tension between them. Helen had confided in a few close friends about feeling neglected and lonely in her sexless marriage. She expressed how Robert's frequent absences had made her feel more like a single parent than a partner. On the night of Helen's murder, Robert claimed he had been working overnight at his office in downtown Oklahoma City. He told the detectives he hadn't noticed anything unusual when he returned home early the next morning, only to find Helen's lifeless body. Detective Dwayne Yokum and her team scrutinized Robert's alibi and his reaction to discovering his wife's death. They questioned him thoroughly, aiming to determine whether his grief was genuine or if it concealed something more sinister. During the interrogation, Robert remained calm and composed, answering questions in a measured tone. He expressed deep sorrow over Helen's death, but his detached demeanor unsettled the detectives. He admitted that he and Helen had been experiencing marital problems, but insisted that he still loved her and would never have harmed her. The detectives couldn't overlook the possibility that Robert's troubled marriage and Helen's affair with their neighbor's daughter, Kayla Ronley, might have given him a motive for murder. When questioned about his whereabouts on the night of the crime, Robert insisted he had been working, providing time-stamped emails and phone records to support his claim. Although his alibi appeared credible, the detectives remained skeptical. The detectives observed that Robert's profession equipped him with the skills and resources to potentially cover his tracks if he were involved in the crime. Despite his calm demeanor, his strained marriage, and the chilly nature of his relationship with Helen kept him under intense scrutiny. The detectives knew they had to monitor him closely while they continued to piece together the events leading up to Helen's death. The third suspect in the investigation was Karen Ronley, Taylor's 42-year-old mother. Karen, a single mother, worked long hours as a nurse at Norman Regional Hospital. Known for her dedication, she often worked double shifts to support herself and Taylor. Despite her busy schedule, Karen was known as a strong, no-nonsense woman who cared deeply for her daughter. She and Helen Marquardt had been friends for several years, bonding initially over their shared experiences as mothers and homemakers. Over time, Karen noticed changes in Taylor's behavior. Taylor had become more secretive, and their previously close relationship seemed to be deteriorating. Karen suspected that something was happening between Taylor and Helen, though she wasn't certain of the details. A few days before Helen's murder, Karen confronted Helen about her suspicions. The confrontation took place in Helen's driveway and turned into a heated argument, during which Karen demanded that Helen end the relationship with her daughter. Protective of Taylor, Karen was deeply concerned about the potential harm to her daughter's future. The confrontation left both women angry, and Karen left feeling unsettled. When Detective Dwayne Yokum and her team questioned Karen, they were aware of the argument she had with Helen. The detectives asked Karen about her relationship with Helen and the reasons behind the confrontation. Karen, typically composed, displayed signs of stress during the interrogation. She acknowledged the argument with Helen but denied any involvement in her death. Karen explained that her primary concern was Taylor's well-being and that she had only wanted to protect her daughter from harm. The detectives questioned Karen about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. Karen explained that she had been working a night shift at the hospital and had clocked out just before midnight. She backed up her alibi by providing time-stamped records from the hospital's timekeeping system. Despite her strong alibi, the detectives couldn't overlook the intensity of her argument with Helen or the fact that she lived so close to the crime scene. Karen's protective nature and proximity to the Markwart home kept her as a person of interest. The detectives continued to investigate her involvement, searching for any possible connection between the argument and the events leading to Helen's murder. While Karen insisted on her innocence, the detectives knew they couldn't rule her out just yet. The investigation into Helen's death was still ongoing, and Karen's potential involvement remained a crucial part of the case. Then, on June 12, 2022, as the summer heat began to settle over Norman, Oklahoma, a significant breakthrough in the case emerged. Around 10 a.m. that day, Detective Dwayne Yokum received a call from a technician at a local electronics repair shop, Tech Fix, on Main Street. The technician had been working on a malfunctioning home security system brought in by a customer when he made a startling discovery. Hidden within the system's memory were several video files, which appeared to be footage recorded inside the Markwart home, specifically in the master bedroom where Helen's body was found. The technician, understanding the gravity of his discovery, promptly contacted the police. Detective Yokum and her team wasted no time, arriving at Tech Fix to review the footage. The videos, spanning several months before the murder, revealed disturbing evidence. Each clip documented moments in the Markwart household, shedding light on the escalating tension and events that culminated in Helen's tragic death. The recordings exposed Helen's secret affair with Taylor Ronley, capturing their intimate moments. However, what was even more unsettling was that Helen had been covertly recording these encounters, likely without Taylor's consent. The footage not only confirmed the forbidden relationship but also highlighted the growing strain between Helen and Taylor as their relationship became increasingly volatile. In one of the final recordings, made just days before the murder, Helen's voice could be heard clearly as she threatened to expose their relationship if Taylor ever tried to end it. The footage revealed a relationship that had spiraled into a toxic dynamic, with Helen becoming increasingly possessive and controlling, while Taylor appeared visibly anxious and frightened. This new evidence marked a significant turning point in the investigation, adding weight to the suspicion that the escalating tension between Helen and Taylor may have played a crucial role in the events leading up to Helen's death. The detectives began to see Helen's murder in a new light. It was not merely a crime of passion, but the tragic culmination of a relationship that had become increasingly volatile and dangerous. The footage offered a glimpse into Taylor's mindset, revealing her growing fear and desperation as Helen's threats intensified. This evidence suggested that Taylor, feeling cornered and powerless, might have acted in a moment of sheer panic to escape the suffocating grip of Helen's control. The investigation now focused on unraveling the final moments between the two women, seeking to determine if Taylor's fear had ultimately driven her to commit the unthinkable. Armed with this new evidence, Detective Yokum and her team went back to the Markwart home to search for the hidden cameras. They discovered several small, hidden devices scattered around the bedroom, which confirmed that Helen had been recording the videos. This finding marked a major turning point in the investigation. With a clearer understanding of the situation, the detectives shifted their focus more intensely on Taylor Ronley, moving closer to uncovering the truth about Helen Marquardt's death. As the investigation neared its conclusion, Taylor became the central figure of interest. The hidden footage found in Helen's home provided crucial evidence that pointed directly at her involvement. On June 14, 2022, Detective Dwayne Yokum and her team believed they had gathered enough evidence to proceed with an arrest. Taylor Ronley, at just 18 years old, was a well-regarded high school senior who had once seemed destined for great things. With her vibrant personality and strong academic record, Taylor appeared to have a bright future ahead of her. However, behind closed doors, Taylor was entangled in a toxic and secretive relationship with Helen. What began as a seemingly benign connection had deteriorated into a damaging situation marked by Helen's controlling behavior and possessiveness. The weight of this unhealthy relationship had cast a shadow over Taylor's once promising future. On the night Helen was murdered, the tension between her and Taylor finally snapped. The hidden videos revealed Helen threatening to expose their secret relationship, using the recording she had made without Taylor's consent. Feeling trapped and scared, Taylor reached her breaking point. In a moment of sheer panic and desperation, Taylor reached for the gun on Helen's nightstand and pulled the trigger. The chaotic crime scene, with furniture knocked over and shattered glass scattered across the floor, revealed the intense struggle that had ended in tragedy. Detective Yokum, now certain of the case, acted swiftly. On the afternoon of June 14th, at precisely 3 p.m., the police arrived at the Ronley residence. Inside, Taylor was sitting on the living room couch beside her mother, Karen. The officers approached them, calmly explaining the situation before taking Taylor into custody for the murder of Helen Marquardt. Taylor, clearly distressed, didn't put up a fight. It was as though she felt a sense of relief, like a burden she'd been carrying was finally being lifted. Meanwhile, Karen was left stunned. She was completely unaware that her daughter had been entangled in such a perilous relationship, and the truth left her utterly speechless. The arrest caused a ripple of shock throughout the community. Helen's family, particularly her husband Robert and their 3 children, were heartbroken by the news. Robert had sensed that something was off in his marriage, but he never could have predicted it would lead to such a tragic outcome. The Markwart family, once viewed as the ideal suburban success story, was now in ruins. As the days passed, more information emerged about the toxic sexual relationship between Helen and Taylor, revealing a complicated web of emotional abuse and desperation. The community, which had once regarded Taylor as a bright and promising young woman, started to see her actions in a new light, considering the psychological torment she had suffered. Taylor's arrest signaled the start of a lengthy legal battle that would compel everyone involved to face the unsettling truths hidden beneath the facade of their seemingly perfect lives. The trial of Taylor Ronley commenced in late November 2022, drawing the attention of the entire Norman, Oklahoma community. The courtroom was filled with spectators and media, all eager to witness the case as it unfolded. District Attorney Mark Peters, a 50-year-old seasoned lawyer known for his tough but fair approach, led the prosecution. He argued that Taylor had committed a premeditated murder. Peters depicted Taylor as a manipulative young woman who, when threatened with losing control over her secret affair with Helen Marquardt, decided to take Helen's life rather than confront the consequences. On the other hand, Taylor's defense attorney, Lisa Greentroller, a 38-year-old known for her passionate defense of young clients, took a very different stance. Greentroller argued that Taylor was actually a victim of Helen's emotional and psychological manipulation. She presented hidden video footage as evidence, showing how Helen had progressively pressured and threatened Taylor, pushing her to the edge of despair. Greentroller argued that Taylor's actions, though tragic, stemmed from overwhelming fear and a feeling of being trapped with no escape. She urged the jury to consider the torment Taylor had suffered in the months leading up to the incident. The trial was emotionally intense, particularly for Helen's family, who attended every day, listening to the painful details of Helen's hidden life and the circumstances that led to her death. Robert Markwart was especially shaken as he listened to the testimony detailing his wife's affair and the manipulative behavior she had exhibited toward Taylor. The triplets, too young to grasp the full extent of the trial, were kept away from the proceedings, their lives irrevocably altered by the loss of their mother. After several days of testimony and arguments, the jury finally reached a verdict. On November 29, 2022, Taylor Ronley was found guilty of manslaughter rather than murder. The jury, swayed by the evidence of Helen's manipulation and Taylor's fragile psychological state, opted for a lesser charge. The judge sentenced Taylor to 10 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 5 years. The sentence elicited mixed reactions. Helen's family felt the punishment was too lenient, grappling with the contrast between the woman they knew and the hidden life that led to her death. Conversely, some community members sympathized with Taylor, understanding the challenging circumstances that had driven her to commit the crime. The trial's conclusion led many in Norman to reflect on the hidden struggles that can lie behind closed doors and the tragic outcomes they can lead to. In the aftermath, the lives of everyone involved were deeply affected. Taylor Ronley began serving her sentence at the Mabel Bassett Correctional Center, a women's prison in McLeod, Oklahoma. At just 18 years old, Taylor's life had taken a tragic turn. In prison, she enrolled in counseling and educational programs, seeking to rebuild her life from the wreckage of her past. Her once promising future now seemed uncertain as she faced the repercussions of her actions. Helen Marquardt's family grappled with moving on from the tragedy that had devastated their lives. Robert Markwart, once a successful corporate lawyer, struggled to return to his high-powered career. The revelation of his wife's secret affair and the circumstances of her death had left him deeply shattered. He took a leave of absence from his job to focus on raising his triplets, Ryder, Rifle, and Ryan. At just 9 years old, the children had lost their mother in a traumatic way. Robert tried to shield them from the case details, but the emotional impact was profound. Karen Ronley, Taylor's mother, faced a difficult struggle of her own. As a dedicated nurse who had always worked long hours to support her daughter, Karen was overwhelmed with guilt, questioning how she could have overlooked the signs of Taylor's distress. Despite the pain, she remained committed to supporting Taylor, visiting her regularly and advocating for her early release. The Norman community, once tight-knit and conservative, was stunned by the events that had unfolded in their quiet suburb. Helen Marquardt's death and the ensuing trial served as a cautionary tale, revealing that even in seemingly perfect neighborhoods, dark secrets could lie hidden beneath the surface. Friends and neighbors who had once admired the Markwart family began to reflect on their own lives, questioning what might be concealed behind their own closed doors. Life in Norman gradually returned to normal, but the memory of Helen's tragic death and the subsequent trial lingered. It remained a stark reminder of the hidden pain and desperation that can lead to unimaginable consequences.